My name's Adela, and I make minis. Last month, I challenged myself to make
100 vases in 100 days.
A lot of people ask me how I make my minis, and some of them ask if I coil them. I always laugh and say that would be crazy. Well, today I decided to let loose and try out some tiny coiling. The halves of my body didn't quite match up, and I thought it would be a fun way to make up the difference in width. It wasn't nearly as fiddly as I thought it would be, but I did have to be insanely gentle so as not to squish the piece. And it did work really well, but it definitely would have been faster to just remake one of the halves. Just wouldn't have been as fun. Once the body was done, I added my pinched out neck and lots of handles. One of your lovely comments had inspired me to up my handle count. Let me know what you think of this one. I really love it. Today started off with a sketch. My daily scrolling had inspired me to look at Rococo ceramics and all of its frilly, fancy embellishments, and I thought, what better embellishment than a bow? So I pinched out a spherical body, then a tall, hollow foot, and finally an equally as long, slightly flared neck. I then trimmed down the foot and got to work gently pushing the clay until I made a cute little frill all the way around. Once I'd refined the shape with my loop tool, I then added some handles, and then onto the tricky part, the ribbon. For this, I flattened out some tiny clay sausages and worked quickly to create all of the components. I broke the bow down into 4 sections: the dangly bits, the loops, the knot, and the piece that wraps around the back. It took a little bit of brain power to make sure I added them in the correct order, and I may have totally forgotten about the back piece until I thought I was finished. But either way, I am so proud of this one. I just hope it survives the kiln. I started off today with a familiar shape with lots of space on the body. I wanted to see if yesterday's ribbon magic could work for something more complex. So for this one, I thought I would try a flower bow. By the way, let me know what you think of this one in the comments because it was an absolute nightmare to make. The first problem was the clay drying out too quickly because of how thin it was. You'd make one loop and then the clay would be dry and snap when you tried to make the other half. Or I'd wet the clay and then it would stick to the table and be totally ruined. I must admit that I wanted to make the bow much denser originally, but I eventually gave up on that idea. The next issue was that I'd decided to make the bow separately and then attach it once it was done. Turns out I shouldn't have done that because by the time it was finished, it was too dry to shape to the body and it just stuck out awkwardly. Second time around worked a charm though, and I was able to contour the loops as I went. Not bad. Okay, I had a solid plan for this one. More handles and more ribbons. I started off by pinching out the 2 halves of my body and joining them together. I then pinched out a dish-shaped neck and joined that to the body. Then I trimmed it down a little bit because I felt it was a bit too big. And next, I moved on to the handles, making sure that each new part is blended in well to avoid future cracks. Finally, I moved on to the tiny bow, which, as always, was fiddly and a little bit stressful, but totally worth it. I think I'm going to glaze this one white. It's giving me Nordic vibes for some reason. Or maybe the handles remind me of antlers? Either way, it's a great little vase. And if you'd like to get your hands on this one or any of the other minis I make, don't worry because they will be available through my website very soon. Just keep an eye out for updates. I felt quite ill on day 47, so decided I didn't really want to mess with ribbons today. Instead, I focused on making a nice long body with a longer neck to match and some cute little handles. I then hollowed out the bottom to make sure that my pot wasn't wobbly. I'm really enjoying the more elaborate handles from the previous few days, so I thought I'd spruce this one up with a few more. Originally I wanted to stack the handles all the way up to the top, but once I'd added this second pair, I thought the more stripped back approach looked nicer. I finished this one off with a quick coat of white slip, and then I sketched out some ideas and settled on this little doodle. I can't wait to see how it looks when it's finished. If you've been watching my videos for a while, you'll know that I love a good tulipiere. These were all the rage in the 17th century for growing tulips indoors, and they're making a little bit of a comeback. I was initially going to go for 3 spouts, like the one from day 29, but I changed my mind once I'd attached the central spout. For this one, I thought having 4 smaller spouts around the edge would suit better. Once I'd attached them, I then went back to that central spout. I couldn't tell if it was too tall or the wrong shape, but something about it just wasn't working for me. I then got the idea to embellish the lip with a little frill, and it instantly solved the problem. Turns out the piece just needed a focal point. I finished this one off with some tiny spheres to bring texture to the body and to balance out the overall shape. And I absolutely love this one. It looks amazing, especially with some tiny flowers or sprigs. I decided to pare things back today with just a simple little vase. Once I'd made the body and attached the neck, I decided to add a frill to the lip. I then wanted to play around with the tiny spheres again. I tried a few different combinations, but for some reason, none of them were really filling me with joy. In the end, I opted for some varied stripes to suit the vintagey feel this vase was giving off. I can't believe I am pretty much halfway through this challenge. I've learned so much and discovered some really cool new things along the way. Thank you so much for watching along. I hope you're enjoying it. I've got 41 minis left to make, so remember to subscribe so that you don't miss them.